You're about to watch a video showing our Dirty Pour sample kits. If you'd like to purchase one of our Dirty Pour sample kits to make your own natural look like this, you can purchase in the description below or directly on our store at Leggari.com. Or if you're watching this video, you may have already purchased one of those Dirty Pour sample kits, and this is the tutorial on how to mix it up and how to apply it. Enjoy. So we want to show you how to apply our Dirty Pour sample kits. Now most likely you chose 2, 3, or 4 colors to go in your Dirty Pour sample kit. So we want to show you what that looks like. The first thing you want to do is get a piece of 1/2" MDF and cut it 1 foot by 2 foot. That's what we like to use because they don't warp. They're phenomenal boards to use for sample boards. So cut a piece of 1/2" MDF 1 foot by 2 foot. And then we don't have to paint the board, but I'm going to paint this black. It's going to kind of mimic a primer. Now you never want to use a paint on your actual project, but for a sample board that you're going to use is just to see if you like the product, or for a larger installation, it's fine. You can use the paint just for the sample board. So we just got some cheap black paint, and I'm just going to make the whole board black. And what I'm doing is I'm basically just sealing in the board. I want to seal the board so when I put my epoxy on it, it's not going to soak in as much. And again, this will kind of mimic the primer when it comes time to actually doing like a floor or a countertop or something that you need to last forever. The paint is really not something you ever want to use on a surface as a permanent coating. Paint does not bond that well to things except for just sheetrock and siding and external things like that. Anytime you're using coatings, you want to use a real high grade primer, and we have the primers that come in the kits or on our stores. Again, you don't have to paint the sample board. I think it's an easy way to just seal the board quickly. But one thing you do want to do with the Dirty Pour sample kits especially is we want to paint the edges. We want to make sure that all of the edges are painted. We're going to tape on the edges here in just a minute. Most paints dry really, really fast too. It's been about 5 minutes. Our paint is dry. Now what we want to do is we want to take some standard Scotch tape, and we want to tape a border, kind of dam up the edge all the way around with this Scotch tape. So you want to tape about 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch high. And we're going to go around this probably 2 or 3 times just to reinforce the tape a little bit, because there is a little bit of pressure that the epoxy causes when you get a lot of it on a board. All right, now I went around once, and I want to make sure that it's pushed really good on all the edges. We want to avoid any of the edges blowing out or it leaking anywhere underneath the tape. So you want to just push down really good. Once that first one is stuck down really good, you can just keep going around because the tape will stick to itself really well. You can always tilt it up on the edge as well. Might be a little bit easier. Just be careful not to smash down the tape. I'm just keeping it on the end. I've got all the tape. You can see it's sticking out on the top and on the bottom. Now what we want to do on the bottom is we want to push down the bottom. I'll show you one side. and then I'll flip it back over. But you basically just want to make sure there's a nice crease, that it's flat all the way on the bottom. It's easier to do this pushing down on the board, creating a little bit of pressure. So you're essentially going to fold down all 4 flat sides and make sure it's creased really well underneath, right on the corner. What that does is if you have any epoxy that does happen to get through the tape, you won't lose all of your epoxy, and sometimes it'll buy you a little bit more time to kind of smash a board up against that and keep the dam going. So underneath, that's all we've done. We've just folded the edges over. And now what we'll do is now that the board's ready, we'll actually unpack the Dirty Pour sample kit box. So it's gonna seem confusing, it's very simple. So we'll just set everything that comes in the box out on the board, and I'll show you the best way to organize this. That'll make a lot of sense. So you're gonna have 5 stir sticks. You're gonna have, again, 2, 3, 4 colors, up to 4 colors. And then we have a bunch of part A's and a bunch of part B's that are already pre-measured to go with each other. So the first thing we want to do is we want to set all of our part A's together and all of our part B's together. And it makes it simple with the color of the caps. So each of these part A's goes with one of these part B's. It's that simple. So you essentially have 5 little kits, and then we have these 5 stir sticks that go to each of these kits. One thing that makes it nice to use these stir sticks, if you can take some wire cutters and you can just clip off the edges, you can cut off the round edge. It makes it easier to stir with them. So we actually like to cut off the round edge on these stir sticks. So now we've got our stir sticks here, we've got our 5 kits, and we have our 4 bags of our metallic colors. Now, you'll probably have different metallic colors than this, but this is essentially what your sample kit will come like. Take one sample kit, part A and a part B, just take one of your 5 kits, put them together and set them aside for now. And then on the other side, we can take all of our part B's and we'll set those aside. So what I want to do first is I want to work with my part A's. So I'm going to take one color and mix it into these part A's. It's as simple as that. Again, you set aside one of them. We're going to use that to just flood over the whole kit, the whole board, just to get epoxy over the whole surface. And then we're going to use these 4 kits to add the color. And as you probably guessed, these stir sticks actually go with these. So we need 4 here, and then we'll need 1 over here for this clear kit. So the first thing you want to do is open up all of these and pour in the powder. The powder's already pre-measured. And we'll just begin to stir all of these up. I don't want to do it on the board because if I get some powder on the board, the epoxy is not going to stick very well to it. So you just want to make sure that you're not doing it on the board. So now what we want to do is we want to just mix the powder into the part A of the epoxy and just stir slow so you don't kick up a bunch of the metallic powder as dust. And then once that metallic powder is fully submersed, you can mix it a little more radically. All right, now we have all of our metallics are mixed in with our part A's. This makes it very simple to start the dirty pour process because we have our hardeners for each of these colors ready to go. So when it comes time to do the actual sample board, we just add our part B into our part A, mix it up, and now we can use it. So what I'm going to do is actually show you how to mix up the clear coat, and we'll spread it out. We're going to mix up the part A and the part B of the one we set aside. This is just clear. There's no metallic mixed into it like the ones we've already mixed up. We want to take the part A and the part B of the one we already set aside. And I'm going to take the B and pour it into the A. You probably don't want to do this on the board. We mess with epoxy a lot, so we're pretty good at not spilling and things like that, but you probably want to do that off the board. You want to mix the clear epoxy up for a couple minutes, scraping the sides, scraping the bottom a lot, scraping each side of the stir stick. You're just trying to mix it up really well. If you have a part of your wall, the wall to the sample board that seems to continue to fall, you can grab a stir stick and put a piece of tape on the stir stick and put it on that part of the wall if you need to. That'll help reinforce that. So now we have the clear epoxy. We have these colors ready to go. And what we'll do is we'll just pour this clear epoxy all over the board. The point of this small amount of clear epoxy that we're putting on the board is we want to just create a surface so that when we put our colors on the board, they move easier. They have something to kind of flow over. So we don't need a lot of epoxy for this. We're just trying to almost paint on a thin layer of epoxy everywhere. So we're going to stretch it a little bit. It's plenty for what we're trying to do. Okay, so we laid out that very thin coat of epoxy. Now we have our part A's with our metallics already mixed in, and then we have the accompanying B's to go with them. So, simple process. What we're going to do is we're going to take all the B's and pour them into the A's. This is something where it does make it easy if you have a friend or someone that can help out, because there's just a lot of kind of time-consuming mixing that you need to do to make sure it's mixed thoroughly. All right, now just like the clear, now that the B's are all mixed in, we just want to mix each one of these for a couple minutes, scraping the sides and the bottom. You probably don't want to do it over the board, just in case you drip some of it. You don't want to drip anything that's not thoroughly mixed. So now, this is where all the magic happens. So you want to grab some solo cups, some sort of cups, and we're going to set out 3 of them. We'll have an extra one, but we're really going to use 3 of them. The other thing you're going to want to do is take the box that everything came in and just cut one of the thick sides off, and obviously be careful. So we're going to use this side of the box as it's almost going to act like a spatula while we're doing our dirty pour. What it does is it helps us pour out the dirty pour on a wider area so that we're not just pouring it out of one part of the cup. We're actually going to pour it on the cardboard. So what we're going to do with these 3 cups is we're going to make 3 batches of the dirty pour. I'll probably do 2 colors at a time. There is a little bit of an art to this, but honestly, you could do this 1,000 different ways. You almost can't screw it up. That's why we love the dirty pours. And then the very last one, I'll probably actually scrape out a lot of the color. This will be probably one of the first ones I use because there's going to be a lot more color in it. But notice how I'm trying to keep the color together. I'm pouring the black color into the black. And I'll take the brown. I'm just going to pour that to one spot. I'm going to add a little bit more of this to the first one. Again, there's no rhyme or reason, guys. This is just kind of the beauty of these dirty pours. You can get really creative with how you add the color into the batches even. Everything changes how the dirty pour looks, but they all look very natural. The key is that when you're pouring the color in, that they're at least staying in their own little area. Add a little bit of this. Now, we didn't have to do 3 batches. We could have done 4 batches. We could have done 2 batches. We think 3 batches works really well because we have a lot of area to cover with these batches, but this also is going to help. So now these are ready to go. We don't want to leave them here for like 10, 20, 30 minutes. We really should get these out of the container within about 5 minutes. So you don't want to go run to the store and grab something. The epoxy's mixed up, it's ready to go, so now we want to get it out on our board. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and just pour it along the top of this, and as it gets to the bottom, I'm going to slowly move it across the board. Notice I can kind of control it a little bit where I want it to drip. I'm going to leave the rest of it in there. I'm going to grab one of my other batches. I'm just going to begin to follow the same exact path. It doesn't have to be perfect. You can even separate it a little bit, but we're going to follow the same path. Now we can give this a minute just to kind of set up. This was 4 different colors. I can take the darker colors and I can even begin to do a vein right through the middle if I wanted. If I wanted to create something or right on the edge, I can follow this brown. Notice how natural that looks. I can even follow the inside of this silver color with that same technique. So we'll give this a couple minutes. It's going to continue to move for quite a while. So what we're going to do is we'll let it move for about 3 or 4 minutes, and then we're going to spray a little bit of alcohol on it just to get some of these colors to go together a little bit better. But really, I mean, you saw exactly how to do it. That's it. Okay, it's been a couple minutes since we did the design, and notice all the colors are beginning to move in the black. The cool thing about the dirty pour is you can actually leave some of those minor fractures of black, and it'll just continue to level out. So what we'll do is we'll spray a little bit of isopropyl alcohol on it, and you want to just little tiny pulls just over the whole entire board. a lot of that will go away, but it does a couple different things. It helps dissipate a lot of the bubbles that happens in the epoxy just because we're layering the epoxy. We're not pouring it out and squeegeeing or rolling or anything. We're actually layering it and trapping quite a bit of air under all of those layers. So it helps release a lot of that air, but it also helps create a more natural look between the colors. But a lot of the actual dispersing effects, they will go away. You won't necessarily keep all of that. But it's just a very natural way to get this look. All right, it's been about 30 to 40 minutes. That's kind of the sweet spot depending on how hot, how cold it is in your shop, house, garage, wherever you're working. The hotter it is, the faster it sets up. The colder it is, obviously, the longer it takes to set up. So you want to wait between 30 and about 45 minutes before you pull the tape on the edges. So what we're going to do is just peel the tape and begin to let the epoxy flow down. So we can pull the back, but I'll show you on the front here. It's going to start going over the edges. You want to take the same brush that you use to paint your clear coat, and just begin. Let me pull this real quick. Just begin to paint the edges as it's going over the edge. And what that'll do is that'll basically help the epoxy flow over the edge and coat evenly. If you just want to see what the colors look like in your design before you do your own dirty pour, you don't necessarily have to go through all the trouble to do the edges, but we definitely want to show you how to do them if you would like to paint the edges. But notice, once I swipe on this board, watch, it'll continue to flow over the edge. See how it's already starting to flow here? That's what we want. It'll continue to flow over the edges of this board for probably another 15 or 20 minutes. And you can take a paint stir stick and just scrape underneath the edges about every 10 to 15 minutes as it's setting up, and eventually it'll quit dripping. Really simple way to clean up the bottom of this board. And there you go, that's how you do a dirty pour sample kit.